Hello, it's me, Jess. Welcome to my channel. I'm here with another channeled message. This is a specific message. It might resonate with you, it might not. All right, so this message, I'm not gonna lie, it feels disturbing to me. Like it is not well with my soul, the way that this is coming through. And I feel kind of queasy in my stomach. And if this message is for you, I feel like this is how this, I want to say, interlude with this man has left you feeling. Just kind of discombobulated, but it goes, the disturbance here, the way that this would have rocked you, the buttons that this would have pushed within you is like deeply disturbing. It feels like you've been confronted with something much more than just problems between a man and a woman that they would have, in relationships. And I think you've had to confront those also, because I just heard this man as a liar and a cheat. I think you would have had to process that, like he did lie to you. And because of that, any interaction you had with him in terms of flirting or building a romance or any schmegsual energy feels like grape to you, like by coercion. And so that's deeply disturbing to you because I feel like this man wore a pleasant mask, but it goes much deeper than wearing a pleasant mask with this guy. The betrayal runs a lot deeper than that because it has something to do with culture. Now, I think this guy is not from the same place that you're from geographically. I don't think that's where he was born and raised. And for some of you, maybe that's not where he lives or he's been traveling around or that's how you met as he moved to your area. I don't think he's there though permanently. I don't think he has an intention of being there permanently. I think he'll go back. To where it is that he's from, because what you're witnessing there, this little excursion, is a break from reality from him. And it's planned that way. It's strategized that way because now this goes to some kind of culture that you share with this man. And I think he spoke to you about this culture. Now, like I said, I don't think you're from the same place geographically. I don't think there's too much of a difference of like the kind of secular culture that you were a part of. Like I think you speak the same language and maybe eat some of the same foods. I don't think it's like drastically different. But I think the culture that you most share in common is a religious one. Even if you're not that same religion now, I think that you were both raised in the same religious tradition, or you were raised with the same moralist like expectations. And you kind of have a shared footing there, or at least you thought you did. You have a similar language. Like if this person is Christian and you were also raised Christian, you both know the 10 Commandments. And I think that you were kind of led to assume that this man would maybe follow the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not commit adultery, for instance. And that was not the case, but that was part of the way he fronted up to you. That was part of like the mask here. And I think, so you feel kind of betrayed by this culture. And I think there is a bit of like a karmic judgment on this culture itself where spirit is saying, look, this is the real face of maybe the men in this culture or of the people in this culture. This is what this culture is actually teaching because it's not, he didn't learn the right lessons. And maybe this is a widespread problem. He learned the lessons of like facade management. And I think that's because he comes from some kind of place. Now, the way it's coming through in my mind, and I don't know how this relates to like your culture, but in America, I feel like this is maybe small town rural and very religious. And I'm picturing this family that I know in my mind, and they are very religious. They had 3 kids and they all got married really, really young. All of them are divorced. And one of the parents did say, like, I don't think that was maybe the best of ideas, but they can't really go too far into that because if you start to think about it too much and you start to kind of debrief and unpack, like, well, why maybe wasn't that the best? Because they encourage their kids to kind of marry their high school sweethearts. And I'm close with one of the kids, and they said that they felt pressured to propose to their girlfriend at the time because they wanted to do schmegs, and they were taught that that was like a sin and everything. And so they wanted to do right by her. They wanted to make sure that she was like respected and everything. I think something like that has gone on here with this masculine, where he's either married and there's like that strong culture around it. And he might be married to somebody that he literally was in school with or something, or it's like, maybe they are young. Maybe some of you are young, and, there's pressure because that's what went on with that family. There was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of actual talk, like, well, when are you guys getting married? To like a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old. And it was that kind of cultural expectation. And I feel like there may be kind of a mixing in here of like an anxious attachment style. I'm not so sure on that, but the reason I'm saying that, I feel like this man may be anxious, preoccupied. Or there's some kind of traits that like come along with that, because anxious, preoccupied, they're very relationship focused. They have this concept in their mind, well, as long as I'm in relationship, and this is like, well, relationship with my parents. So this person is like, well, I'll do whatever you want me to do because I want to be in a relationship. I want you to be accepting of me so that I'm a part of this community. I don't want to rock the boat. And it's okay, so it sounds like the love of my parents is me getting married to my high school sweetheart, this person that they've known me to be with, like when I was 17, 16 or 17. They think that I should be with that person for the rest of my life. There's not a lot of internal analysis going on with this man. He's not getting to know himself because his culture doesn't reward it. It doesn't encourage him. And I feel like that's maybe a mark on this culture or some kind of judgment, because whatever this culture is, I feel like even whoever originally created this probably had the best of intentions, but they meant for it to be digested deeply and understood. The phrase that's like, learn the rules so you can break them properly. I mean, this man definitely he's learned the rules in a certain way, and we'll talk about that, so he can break it properly. And by that, I mean the superficial perspective. He wants to get away with it, and he wants to be able to still present in his community where he's from as being wholesome or living up to some kind of expectation that, let's be very clear, he does not live up to. And he doesn't really feel he needs to live up to it because it doesn't resonate with him deep down. But he doesn't want to explore that, and he doesn't want to call that out. And so he has this bundle of jumbled, confused beliefs that pull him in different directions. And I feel truly, maybe this is like a family curse or a cultural curse where a lot of these people maybe have what I would call hypocritical views on the world, meaning they don't line up. Why do you believe one thing and then you also believe this other thing here? And it's very obvious if you are trained at all in logic that if you believe one of these things, you can't fully believe in the other. So even if you would ask this family or this man for sure to do some type of logic proofing of his beliefs, he couldn't do it, and it would just be a lot of, I don't know, just dismissing of like, oh, well, and I had a little bit of a country accent here. That's because that's kind of the way this is coming through in my mind. It's like, I raised my son to be just, like a good man. The fuck you did. The fuck you did. Anyways, that's just, I have lived around these people. Okay. So, and I feel like now you've had an encounter with this guy because he plays the part, when he's in his, now the other thing is I'm hearing the song by San Hunt, and I've been hearing it this whole time. It's called Sinning with You. It's like, it talks about kind of young couple, my past was checkered, your spotless record was probably in jeopardy. I feel that there's like a purity complex here with this guy, and it might be Madonna Schmore. And I think you were raised with maybe the same one, but this guy's got you in a bucket that you don't got yourself in. And it's because you are like, well, I'm doing the things that I believe in. And I think maybe even some of you have done some debriefing work or some deconstructing work around your values. And you're like, well, that clearly, like, read the Bible, right? Have you ever read Leviticus? If you haven't processed Leviticus, there's a lot of things that people disagree with. I also feel like this man has like an alcohol problem. So he doesn't live by the Bible, but he wants to judge you. And it has to do with his treatment of you. So you're not like, I feel like quote unquote pure enough for him. But again, he's confused because he's not assessing you as a person, and he's not assessing this person that he's with as a person. He doesn't look at whether or not their chemistry is there and their soulmates, or like whether it makes sense for them to be in the long term. I also feel like there's something to do with happiness here, where it feels like these two were like it made sense when they were like a young couple. I want you to think back to your dating in high school and your young adulthood. You know exactly why you broke up with that person, don't you? It's because it was a young kind of relationship. I also think, again, maybe it was like partying and alcohol. Again, there's this weird split, and this doesn't surprise me growing up Christian. This is, we talk a lot about this actually online. People are starting to talk about this more. That F-boy to Christianity, like, pipeline, it's linked, and what it's linked by is a lack of self-awareness, absolute misogyny, men being narcissistic and thinking they're the center of their world and feeling that it is their right, their God-given right, nonetheless, to abuse women. But he goes somewhere else to do it. And that's why he feels okay about it. Because he's got it all kind of worked out where he's thinking, well, this will never get back to my family or to my community. And if they do, well, they've got this entire other impression of me. So it's going to be totally out of the blue. What do you mean my precious Johnny is out there abusing women? He is not taught to abuse women. That's because they don't understand how they raise their kids. And it might be that they raise their kids of, listen, you are good to certain, I feel like I'm speaking in a country tone. You are to be a certain way to Jenny over here because they know Jenny. And if he's not correct to Jenny, then he's got a community up his butt. You understand? But these people don't care about women, not just any women. He wasn't really taught that. He wasn't taught he needs to keep himself in check. He wasn't taught not to abuse people. He was taught to hide and to get away with it because he doesn't believe these things at his core. You can tell because he hasn't integrated it. This is a man that is unintegrated and because of that causes harm and havoc and is a representative of this culture. So that's what I'm really getting here. But I think there's something with alcohol and happiness is what I wanted to say. Like, again, because it feels very young and it feels... I just heard young, dumb and broke. But I feel like what made these two happy when they were 16 and 17, much like any healthy of a person, a lot of that stuff you kind of grow out of or it changes or it morphs. But I think a lot of this is like maybe party culture or alcohol culture. And maybe these people all like knew each other, I don't know, but it feels like he didn't think about who he wants to be in the long term. And if this relationship and the kind of habits that they have between the two of them, I think this is all true for her as well. But like the habits that they had, what that is going to grow into over time. And if that sits well with them and if that's how they want their kids to be raised, because there's a real streak of hypocrisy here in this community. I'm seeing a line being divided down. I feel like there is some type of judgment where maybe some kind of information come out. I'm seeing like a fault line, but like I'm seeing it steaming and it's so something maybe gearing up to happen. It feels like that it's a fault line, right? So like the tectonic plates are shifting and there could be some kind of like earthquake here. I feel like as a metaphor and it's going to kind of bring down these kind of structures or something here. And it could be to do with him and he could be, I don't know, it feels like other people though, because this feels like a cultural thing. So the karmas that are playing out here, if you are like, why was I treated in such a manner? Because again, I think that you embody a lot of the things of the culture. That's okay. So I want to go back to that song, Sam Hunt, Sinning With You. It never felt like I was sinning with you. Because I think that he's maybe, I don't know, with somebody here. Maybe they are divorced now, but maybe, I don't know. This is maybe the source of some type of confusion here. So he's mistaking that for purity of her being young and her being inexperienced. And I'm not saying that's not a type of purity, but if like American culture, it's weird because it's so materialistic and like commercialized and it's all about money and status and schmegs everywhere. But then it's got this like schizophrenic personality where on the other side, it's very like purity, but it has this warped perception of like purity and stuff. And I feel like that's playing out here. So he felt because maybe they did the thing together for the first time that's the pure sanctified relationship. And anything outside of that isn't. Again, he's not looking at what's in front of him. He's not looking, internally or anything. Yeah, he's got this kind of viewpoint that maybe schmegs is dirty, but he also likes doing it. It's very split. In this culture, but like within this man. And so I feel like he met you. And I think that your story might actually have mirrored his story. Like, again, growing up religious, maybe you had, a boyfriend or something you did that with, and it stirred up a lot of these feelings. But I feel like you're much more integrated with like your beliefs and you weren't as fearful. And I think it's because of something to do with relationship and like your attachment to relationships. And so some of you could be securely attached in your relationships where that you're allowed to have your own philosophies and you're allowed to go like deep down subconsciously, your family and your community, even though maybe you share a culture with this, they're healthier with it where you're allowed to philosophize and you're allowed to say, well, I don't know. I mean, I had this experience. It's confusing for me. Maybe some of you were in therapy or something, or you've just done your deconstruction work or something here didn't feel right. Or, I don't know, but because you didn't have that experience, because that's what I'm kind of getting. It's that Sam Hunt song. Like, I think that's you. I feel like it is the way that he felt that over with some kind of other situation. And I think it was because of the kind of innocence that comes with youth. But I think that there is a pure energy, like it's not wrong or anything. There's like lovemaking energy here, like between you and him. And he wasn't thinking of it that way because you are a person from a different place. And he goes there to be the devil's son. He goes there to abuse women. He goes there to abuse women and get away with it. And when he's called out, he can say, she's lying. Can you believe how they raise people over there? I'm so surprised that she's accused me of that. That's what he's doing. This is just a cheater. And he does all the things that cheaters do, right? So to the wife, he's saying, I don't know, that girl's crazy. She just, I work with her. She just follows me around at work all the time. Liar, freaking liar. And then to you, he's saying, oh, well, my relationship's really on its last legs. We're getting a divorce. We're separated, blah, blah, blah. Or he might even be saying, if this is like the religious thing that I think it is, he might be saying, well, I'm trapped in this marriage. He could get out of this marriage. But there's this like dependence. He's extremely dependent on the way that other people, this is not a guy. And maybe that's what shocked you, because I think he knows what's expected of him. So he knows how to put on the performance. I feel like he's been doing this since like a teenager, where I think he was not at all lived up to a culture that he was supposed to. And I'm not even saying he should be shamed for that, but I'm saying like there was no learning experience, because you can learn from your mistakes, but there was no learning experience here because he just would never process it. He would never say, well, I think that he was meant to have an experience where he did schmegs with somebody. And I think he was meant, I felt this way, where I knew immediately, I can't even describe it. I knew immediately that it wasn't a sin. I didn't attribute that to like the person I was with or anything. I do think that there are sinful ways that you can do it, like the way that he does it, for instance, by being deceitful. But I think he's all confused about that because he's just not very pensive. And it's because I think he likes to keep things on a surface level because he is determined. This is the highest priority in his life, to have one foot in one realm and another foot on the other realm. Because that, I don't care what this man was raised to believe. No one is more the devil's son than this man is. And he doesn't care about it, so long as he maintains a facade and a face. And I do think there's judgment on this culture for having sicked this man onto the women of another culture, of a neighboring, this in America. Okay, so it's like, I don't think that this man just goes like a couple towns over. I think that's too risky. Because people are going to know people who are going to know people. And somebody with credibility in his community of like, no, Bob wouldn't lie about that. What's this I hear about you being a dick? Like, I think he maybe would get reined in. I just saw someone get smacked in the head. This is kind of old time. This feels very like old timey. So I think like, I don't know, there's like, he's crossing state lines here. For sure. I don't think it's just necessarily, but if you're somewhere else, maybe he goes to a different country or something. Or it feels like very far away, like maybe he goes to the other side of the state or the other side of the country. It just feels like that to me. He could be using like a pseudonym or something like that. He's a liar. Yeah, thou shalt not lie. Like literally I'm just hearing the 10 Commandments and he just stands in disregard to most of them. I feel like for a lot of you, this may be a past life thing, because Spirit just told me people have been doing this since the beginning of time. Men have been doing this since the beginning of time. And that could have been how you ended up in that river. So that means, because that's the one commandment where I was like, obviously it hasn't gotten that far, but in past lives, I feel like it has. This man stands in violation of a lot of the commandments that he's like supposedly upholding. And there's some kind of cultural karmas here because when people meet him, they've met a son of a culture, and they get that impression of the culture. And maybe it's not the wrong impression to get, but this culture is kind of considered one being in and of itself. The people who are there, it's like an organism in and of itself. And this organism won't do its shadow work. It won't fix the root of the problem here because there's just so many mechanisms in place to keep the lies and the facade afloat. And I think this is a kind of culture too, where it's like, if you challenge the culture, if you criticize it in any way, I just heard loyalty. That's very narc shit, right? Narcs demand loyalty because, and they'll misuse that loyalty as well, because loyalty is like, I'm going to treat you they use it as like, I'll treat you whatever way I want and you're never going to leave and you're never going to whatever. It sets up abusive dynamics instead of having healthy conversations where things are being mirrored back of, I don't like the way that you treat me. It makes me feel like this. Or, hey, what you're doing is abuse. It seems like a solution for you, but it's selfish. He's entirely selfish. But that's the opposite of the facade that he's allowed to play in his culture. And I think he spends a lot of time there where he gets smoke blown up his ass about what an exemplary man he is. And he is no such thing. And so he's taken admiration and he's like thieved energy, supply, if you will, from both sides of it, because he'll rip up women's hearts over here. I think God, though, has put a soulmate or maybe soulmates here on this side where he's abusing. And that's supposed to twist up his heart. And I think the actual purity in their relationship, meaning it's, there's no, he's just a karma producing machine, this man. So there'll be karmic obstacles here and it'll come from him because he hasn't sorted himself out. But between the two of them, it would just feel right because God created the two of them to be near and around each other. Because if they're near and around each other in a way that is honest and upfront, then it makes both of them better people, and everyone around benefits from that. That's not true of the relationship that he's in. That is not true of the community that he's in. And I think it's not true of the family that he's in. I think this family is like, don't embarrass me. I want to be seen as a person who has raised a proper son, even though, like I said, it didn't occur. The truth of this situation is that it just flat didn't occur, and it needs to be dealt with. And these people refuse. It's not a wonder to me that these people have raised the person that they did and unleashed it on the world, because they're truth allergic. They don't want to look at the hard truths and then deal with it. And they don't know how to deal with it, maybe, because, they say Tim Fletcher, who's a psychologist on the internet, on the YouTube here, and he's great and I love him. And he says trauma is in a family, which is like family curse stuff, right? Trauma in a family is a family experiencing pain and none of them knowing how to deal with it. And I actually feel that you've dealt with a similar pain and you've had to learn for yourself how to deal with it. And I just heard the word antidote. And I'm not trying to suck you into a rescuer, persecutor, victim dynamic here, because I don't think you're sent to rescue these people, but I think you're a living example of how not to be a hypocrite, how to actually integrate your beliefs. But I don't think that's important to these people, not really. And they would fight tooth and nail to say that is wrong, but they have to maintain their facade. They don't actually live it. And I know for me, like growing up Christian, there's a lot of hypocritical things in the Bible, and you have to kind of sort that out for yourself. And it's always a tell for me, Christians who won't have the conversation with you or who won't acknowledge that sometimes life is sticky and sometimes scripture is sticky and you have to kind of metabolize it. You have to like chew it. These are people like that. And I also think, they like give up their thinking too, to like, I don't know, whoever's standing at the front of their pews. They just believe everything that person says. They might disagree from time to time. I'm not saying like that, but they don't think deeply. There's no benefit to it. This culture it feels like it runs on social currency. And a lot of our cultures do run on social currency, but there's no incentive to actually be a real person. And I think because of it, there's like a lot of karmic relationships here, actually, in this community. It just feeds this unhappiness, this schism inside everybody. I don't think this is just him. I think it's like definitely feels like it's a masculine thing there, like in whatever maybe they teach each other how to do this too, or they cover for each other. Again, that is exactly it. Like they cover for each other instead of having some type of intervention of like, this needs to stop. That this doesn't align with our values. And you are out there abusing other women. And by women, I mean humans. I mean other people. And we are taught not to do that. So I'm not keeping your dirty secret. I understand that you're a good person. And the other thing I'm hearing like from Dr. John Deloney. I listen to him sometimes, not all the time. But I like him as a person, and because I think he's a good man and I think that he actually lives the values. I tend to like that about people. I don't care what values you have, but if you live in alignment with your values, that tends to be a person that's fine by me, And so he was talking about, he's like, I have a lot of male friends, and he laughed and he was like, that make a lot of mistakes that I think are stupid and that I do not agree with, but they're still my friends. And he says, the one type of man that I will not hang out with is a man who cheats on his wife, or the man who destroys human beings in his life, because it's not just the wife that's a victim here. He abuses women. And he says, that's the one kind of guy I won't be around. If he wants to change, then we can walk together for a little while, but I don't want to be around it. And that's what I think. There's no people like that around this man. There's just people who cover for that. That's friendship. And I think that they feel a little bit under siege, these people, by their culture and by the older generation that like hawks down on them and has all these expectations, but their expectations aren't rooted in anything, because just like that family I was telling you about where those 3 kids got married like very, very young, like right out of high school young, not having any life experience, not having figured themselves out. But that family, that one of the parents did say like, well, I just don't know that was the best idea, but they couldn't even say that. Why? Well, I don't know. I mean, it didn't seem to work out, right? Like, but they won't say that, well, no, but they don't really know themselves yet. And so if you want to mitigate the harm that flows from this in the long run, then you need to help somebody usher themselves into like a self-awareness, and they don't know how to do that. This culture doesn't know how to do that. So all they know how to do is like hold each other to some kind of expectation of a facade. And it feels very transactional, like their relationships are dependent upon maintaining some kind of a facade. And I do, like I said, I know that family, and I know that they have, those kids are kind of great now. Like, but they were great before, but like they speak their mind. It's like clashing. They do it more and more, like as they're getting older, and they've kind of have their own like opinions and stuff, like, and that family, there's a lot of love there, and they are genuine people. And so it has been holding, like they will be able to talk things out, So I think maybe this family is the same way. Maybe they'd surprise each other for their, they say love is flexibility, like for their ability to kind of hear somebody out. They shouldn't be flexible for someone's piss poor behavior though. And I think that all they really know how to do is like punish or like, and not just, I feel like this dad needs to be like, yeah, me too. I felt that way too. This kind of rebellious streak. It didn't feel like it fit my life either. And here's how I dealt with it. And here's what I've learned from it. I wish that I would have known this. I wish I would have known myself more. I would have done this differently. I would have held up, like, be honest about how you think your life could have, gone differently. But these also might be some of these people, the people that think everything will be like outside. Well, if I didn't meet so-and-so at this stuff that's out of their control, that's not the same thing as processing. They have to think about themselves. How should they have been able to meet life? These are maybe some are people that kind of argue with life, which life to me is like God energy. God knows what he's doing. But I think that they always just kind of bring it back to this very brittle, wooden, black and white expectation set that has been passed on here. It causes pain in the family. It causes trauma. It causes this split and it schism. And unfortunately, it feels like it means that women get abused, but away from this community. Well, actually, I think probably within this community as well, but it's seen as, again, traditional or like normal. Everybody is meant to sacrifice in a certain way that, because they say to sacrifice means is to make sacred, but that's when it comes from your heart. And when you willingly do that, this is oppression. But then it spreads like outwards. But this is like ground zero for like a lot of people have had to deal with people that have come from this like community. And this community, I think, claims to be righteous in some way, claims to have the answers, claims to be good in some way, behaving like this and sweeping it under the rug. And it's not acceptable. I also think that, it's like they're not encouraged to stand on their own or to develop independence. Because this guy, I feel, needed to self-actualize, needed to be a young adult. The funny thing is, I do think his soulmate is not in this community. I think he needs to leave. But I think he needs to leave single. And then that's putting him in alignment with his highest and best path. And maybe that would have put him in alignment with you or somebody else. Because I think God knows what he's doing. And I think I'm hearing myself say in a previous reading where it's like, okay, do it to her. You want to be abusive? Okay, abuse her. That's your divine soulmate. Abuse her. Dick. Like, it's nothing is sacred here, really. The wrong things are sacred for the wrong reasons within him. And that's why it's caused all this confusion. And I'm seeing the Seven of Cups, and the Seven of Cups comes out and it's like, oh, all my options. And I don't know how to navigate this. And it's because he's both sidesing it. He's one foot in trying to make everybody happy. And I think that's the key to his whole life, is if he can learn how to disappoint people and learn how, but for the right reasons, not a rebel without a cause, but he would need to know himself and he would need to know what he actually believed in, because he does not believe in this country ass little setup. He doesn't believe in it. Not really. I can tell from a distance he doesn't believe in it. But he feels like he's an enemy to his culture, when actually I feel like maybe he's the medicine. Maybe he's meant to say like, this doesn't suit me. I have needs and I shouldn't. I'm hearing that Taylor Swift song, Cruel Summer. I don't want to keep secrets just to keep you. Yeah. Like, I don't want to keep secrets just to be able to go out and explore myself and life. That's the part that's really gross, Because if it's like, hey, I'm single, want to hang out, that's different than all the lies and the secrets. That is what makes him the devil's son. He needs to separate from that. That needs to not be okay. And it's weird to me that it's okay with this culture, whether it's a family culture, but I think it's religious. But and I think this family is like just keeps it on the superficial level. And so they have this trauma, this family has this pain that they keep passing on, and they do not know how to deal with it. But I think something here could have crumbled. This facade could have crumbled, like something could have come out in a way that was believable to this family, even though he felt like he had it airtight. She may have left to be with someone else that she loved. Because they're not meant to be together, these two. I can just tell. Not in the long run. I feel like it made sense as like two kids, you know, doing stupid stuff, but this is not, it kind of is not really like an adult space. And if it becomes that, it leads to problems. And that's not like the fault of either of these people, that they're just not meant to be together, you know? And again, think back. I feel like you have somebody like this where you thought that you were going to be with this person. Remember like 18, 19 years old and you thought you were going to be with that person forever? Remember doing Schmegs the first time and how amazing that experience was? And you were like, I can't believe we can do this. But like, imagine attaching that to the person that you were with and not understanding like, this is just a powerful experience. And you need to be figuring out who that right person is. You know, that's, I feel like what happened here. There's a lot of just delusion because people are not allowed in this family, in this community, they're not allowed to speak the truth or to look at the truth or even want for the truth. They're really not. And they wouldn't know that about themselves because it masquerades as something else. Oh, we're good people because we follow this tradition. Well, why do we follow this tradition? Don't ask that. Do as I say, not as I do. It's going to cause an immense amount of inner turmoil. Don't worry, that's part of the process. When really it's not. There's a kind of pain that tells you you're doing the wrong thing. And there's a kind of pain where you have to kind of get through to transform, and they are different. So I think you were wrapped up in that. And I think this would have disturbed you to your core because this isn't just any kind of lie. I feel like you were led to believe that this is a man who had like the same, and maybe you did make an assumption here, but like it was really slick the way that it was put forward. He knows how to present like he's a wholesome man because he's been baptized, I want to say, like, and marinated in that culture, but he doesn't plan on giving it to you. He has that somewhere else and really just the facade of it. But he uses that mask in order to lure you in so that you will become his victim. That's fucked up. Extra fucked up. And I feel like this man, because he's marinated in certain traditional concepts and has that, but not really, he thinks that he's better than men who abuse women in more overt ways. He doesn't put himself in the same class or the same category. He thinks that he's like righteous. Can you believe that? You've seen this side of him. You've experienced it. Can you believe that? He thinks that this isn't abusive. He thinks he's like, this is what God wants. And it's because there's a lot that he's in Delulu land about who he is and his actions. And you know how I feel about actions, right? Mars rules over actions. Mars rules over all men. Men are creatures of action, and they need to concern themselves greatly with their actions, karmically. And that's not occurring here. And I think he feels like a victim, and maybe told you that, especially after you found out, if you confronted him about it, which I don't know is, because he doesn't have his own truth. So this would probably be just a confusing conversation. And it probably would be, you thought that he was just, you know, some kind of man. He would cry like a 10-year-old, I think, sniveling, crying, nothing's his fault. And he doesn't know what to do. And it's because he just can't break free from, he only knows how to navigate life by wearing a mask and wearing a facade of something that he doesn't believe in. And the first step is that he has to do his own deconstruction process. He needs to learn how to be alone. And he also needs to learn how to separate himself out from the group. And until he does that, he's no real use to anybody. You know, he's not going to be a genuine, authentic partner to anybody. He needs to learn how to be a whole and integrated person. And it will lead him away from this karmic group that he's with. This is a karmic family group that he's with. So anyways, I'm sure you've been through a lot because this is disturbing, like is what I'm getting. Because yeah, I think, and it's not, again, it feels like you have to process like being lied to, being cheated, and some kind of 10 of swords. Maybe this man just like ghosted, just like up and left, but you feel he wasn't raised to do that. So what was going on? Well, he's got a whole other situation here. He never intended to be a good man for you. He knows how to, it's like a hunter that covers himself in deer piss, you know, like that's what it is. Yeah. So I feel like you've had to process not just that, but the fact that someone would stoop so low as to broadcast this culture and to speak to you about their beliefs or their values, or all while doing this, the nerve and the absolute, it's gross. Ugh. And I feel like you probably feel like extremely violated by this and just scared about like navigating the world. So I feel like you're going through a grieving process. I feel like there's like cultural karmas that are being played out here. And I don't know. I would say, yeah, I feel like, never mind. I was going to say something, but I don't think it's true. So anyways, all right, I'm going to leave that there. If that resonates, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Bye guys.